Hey, good morning, everybody. What's going on? You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels. It is early in the AM on Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. We got a lot of stuff to talk about today. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the economy. We're going to be talking about inflation. We have a bunch of business stories to share with you guys today. Let's see some of the stuff we're going to be covering today. In a 45-month period, Uber fees, or the cost of using Uber, jumped 83%. We got an article from the Wall Street Journal talking about shoppers rebel as prices go higher. We've had some huge price hikes coming from companies, and consumers are just now finally starting to slow down their buying. The Hedge had an article, why TikTok must be banned. I thought this was kind of a startling stat. By 2025, over 90% of content online will be AI generated. And I actually saw another article that said 99% of content online will be AI generated. This is essentially, if you guys have ever heard the term the dead internet theory, or the concept of the dead internet theory, that's essentially what it is. So by 2025, the dead internet theory will be true. CNBC had an article talking about how small businesses are desperate for workers, even more so than during at the height of the labor shortage. And then Yahoo Finance had an interesting one. The walls are closing in on corporate employees. CEOs are demanding people return to the office. These are just a few of the stories we're going to be covering in today's video. Now, before we get into today's video, I wanted to give a shout out to today's sponsor. The sponsor of today's video is Merch Informer. Merch Informer is an all-in-one tool for selling on Amazon Merch, or Merch by Amazon, I guess as it's called now. Merch Informer offers analytics, keyword research, trademark research to make sure your t-shirts aren't taken down or you don't get any trademark violations. They have a built-in t-shirt designer, automation tools, and a whole lot more. Check out the link in the description box below for Merch Informer. This is actually a service that I use myself, and that I have used myself in the past as well. When I was doing my best numbers on Amazon Merch years ago, there was probably a good 2-year period where I was bringing in between $900 and $1,400 a month on Amazon Merch. Things have kind of slowed down for me since then, but back during that period, I was using Merch Informer. So check it out if you're an Amazon Merch seller, or if you sell on any print-on-demand platforms. Could be worth your while. So yesterday, actually, before we get into today's news, I've been given some suggestions for shows, documentaries, new YouTube channels to check out. Got a recommendation for you guys today. The name of the channel is The Sitdown. If you guys are into true crime, if you guys are into mafia content, check out a YouTuber or a YouTube channel by the name of The Sitdown. If I remember to do so, I'll link to it in the description box below. The mafia niche is a really interesting one. A lot of the guys who were involved in the New York Mafia and other mafias across the country back in the 80s, most of them turned snitch. Most of them went to jail, but right around now, a lot of them are coming out of jail. And a lot of them have been starting their own mafia YouTube channels, whether you look at the John and Gene show, Sammy the Bull Gravano has a show, Michael Franzese has a show, but The Sitdown is a great show. The guy is a whiz when it comes to mafia history. He really researches his videos, and I kind of like how simple it is. It's literally just him sitting in his house, sitting in his bedroom, telling mafia stories and talking about mafia history. And I believe recently he linked up and is now kind of part of the Barstool Sports Network. But I'll link to his channel down below. It's called The Sitdown. Interesting channel to check out. Let's talk about Uber. I'm sure you guys have noticed the cost of taking an Uber has jumped up tremendously. I remember I used to be able to take an Uber to O'Hare Airport for like $26. I think there might have been a period where I hadn't traveled for a while, and then I wound up taking an Uber either to or from the airport. And I think it was like $83 or $92. And I was like, man, Uber has gone up a lot. Even if you don't take Uber that frequently, if you find yourself on vacation or on a work trip and you need to hop in an Uber, no doubt you've noticed how much more expensive it's gotten. Uber fees jumped 30% between 2018 and 2019, and another 41% between 2019 and 2022. That is an 83% jump over just a 45-month period. Let's see, 45 months is 12, 24, 36, 48. So that's under 4 years. In under 4 years, Uber jumped 83%. We've talked about this on this channel before. The concept of the millennial lifestyle subsidy back around the 2010s or thereabouts. We had a lot of companies come on the scene, a lot of disruptive companies like Uber and Lyft and Grubhub and all these services. And in order to get people to use these new services, they offered the services for cheaper than they should actually cost. There was, cheap money. There was plenty of VC money pouring in, and they could do that. We're now at a point when the cheap money has dried up. The VC money has dried up. Companies actually have to be efficient. They actually have to turn a profit. And we're seeing companies like Uber raise their rates 83%. On top of that, inflation, gas prices, they have to pay drivers more too. But that is a huge jump. We got a Wall Street Journal article from yesterday. Shoppers rebel against higher prices. It said companies are hitting the brakes on higher prices because consumers are limiting their buying. And this is maybe a sign that the Fed is finally having a little bit of success at slowing inflation, right? That is the Fed's ultimate goal, is price stability and to bring down inflation. The Fed tells us that inflation is 7%, 9%, whatever they tell us. You guys have probably realized it's substantially more than that. When your Uber fees jump 83%, inflation definitely isn't at 6%. But let's see. The article went on to say companies are hitting the brakes on higher prices because consumers are limiting their buying. Conagra Brands, which makes Hunt's Ketchup and Slim Jims, raised prices 17% in the recent quarter, and that's on top of two 10% hikes. So two 10% hikes is 20%, 17% on top of that is 37%. Hunt's Ketchup, Slim Jims, these products are up 37%, but the Fed tells you inflation is at 7.1% or 6.8%. Does anybody actually believe it? You're not going to tackle 7% inflation, hiking rates 0.5, 50 basis points at a time. So everything the Fed's been doing for the past year and a half hasn't had a huge effect. We may just now be seeing a slight effect from the increased rates. Conagra said that they are done boosting prices for now because they saw sales fall 8.4%. Another brand, Constellation Brands, they make a lot of different boozes and beers and things like that, but they make Corona. They're planning on smaller price hikes in 2023 because they had noticed that with the larger price hikes, sales had slowed in October. And some companies are raising prices not because their costs actually went up, but because they anticipated prices going up. And here's one thing, Rahm Emanuel, Obama's former chief of staff and also the former mayor of Chicago, he had a famous quote. He said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." So you may not have created the crisis, but how can you benefit from the crisis? And a lot of companies, companies don't like to raise their prices. Even when prices truly do rise, a lot of times companies will try to hold off on raising prices because they know it could potentially hurt sales and anger their buyers. But if everybody else is raising prices, if there's nonstop talk about inflation, even if you don't have to raise prices, it would be a good time to raise prices and to be able to kind of get away with it and just blame inflation because everybody else is. Zero Hedge had an article yesterday, why TikTok must be banned. The federal government has banned TikTok on government devices. The military has banned TikTok on soldiers' phones. And I think we're up to like 21 or 23 different states that are either suing TikTok or have banned TikTok on government devices. I know people love TikTok. I know a lot of people use TikTok. But I am fairly certain that TikTok will be banned in 2023. So we'll see what winds up happening with that. So I saw an interesting article yesterday. By 2025, 90% of online content will be AI generated. I'm sure you guys have watched YouTube videos where there's there's like an AI voice or what do you call that? Like a robot voice, a computer voice. They used to be pretty terrible. They're getting better to where they actually sound somewhat like humans, or at least natural enough that you can actually listen to a video with an AI generated voice or with a robo voice. Now we have tools like ChatGPT, which can write content, write rap songs. It could even potentially write a script for a video. So it won't be long until 90+% of the content online is AI generated. And that's pretty much what the dead internet theory is. The dead internet theory is basically the idea that everybody you're interacting with online is actually bots, and not actually humans. We got another article from Yahoo Finance yesterday. The article was titled, "The Walls Are Closing In on Corporate Employees as CEOs Demand a Return to the Office." Companies said that during 2022, they kind of politely asked people to return to the office. Hey, we'd like you to maybe badge in like twice a week, please. And they weren't too strict on it, but they were, continually asking people, we want you to come back into the office. Well, now in 2023, they mean business. Companies are cracking down. A lot of these companies are saying company culture has suffered and people aren't collaborating. Starbucks CEO says that culture depends on rituals like tasting coffee and storytelling for the design experience. And Disney's Bob Iger said that in a creative business like ours, nothing can recreate in-person connection. I do think that's kind of true, right? If you're just doing data entry, sure, maybe you can work from home. But if you're working in a creative role that actually requires collaboration, it's never going to be the same doing it over a Zoom meeting or over chat as it is doing it face-to-face with your team in person. But we continue to see articles about this, and this trend of bringing people back into the office in 2023 seems to continue. Right now, we're seeing a lot of larger companies and larger corporations bringing people back into the office. Companies tend to follow what other companies are doing. If you look back to when companies, stopped matching 401ks or started cutting 401k programs, one big company does it, and then a lot of other companies start to follow suit. When you looked at companies who first went remote, when the Mexican beer cough first kicked off, it was larger companies. The NBA canceled their season, Disney closed their parks, other companies started going remote, and then everybody else kind of fell in line and followed suit. Same thing with the thing in your arm mandates. Once a couple big companies do something, everybody else tends to follow suit. And right now we're seeing a lot of larger companies, a lot of very vocal and public companies calling people back into the office. And I think you're going to see a lot of other companies start to follow suit as well. CNBC had a piece yesterday, small business desperate for workers. Let's see. At least during the height of the labor. Okay, so family-run businesses. Sorry, my notes are all jumbled here. Hiring at a small business with less than 50 employees slowed for 5 consecutive months. And this wasn't because the demand wasn't there and they didn't need the employees. This is just because they couldn't hire anybody. 50% of businesses said it was harder to hire people during the third quarter of 2022 than during the previous year. So even when the Mexican beer cough was more of a concern to people, even when we were at the height of the Great Resignation and labor shortages, 2 quarters ago, third quarter of 2022, they actually had a harder time hiring then than they did during previous months. Here's kind of a troubling statistic. The richest 1% amassed 2/3 of all the new wealth created in the last 2 years. The top 1% keep getting richer and richer. The system is rigged. In the past couple of years, we had $7 trillion injected into the economy. The 1% got massively rich, much richer than they already were, and everybody else got crumbs. You got a $1,200 stimulus check and unemployment. People acted like they won the lottery, but really they were getting the scraps while the wage divide and the wealth divide continued to get larger. Sure, you got a $1,200 check, but used car prices went up 44%. Sure, you got another $600 check, but home prices went up 50%. You just saw a huge wealth transfer take place right in front of your eyes. I know most of the news these days is bad, but Lowe's CEO says he doesn't see us sinking into a recession or a downturn. When 60% of Americans don't have $500 for an emergency, when 41% of small businesses couldn't pay their rent last month, when 20 million households can't pay their utility bills, and 15,000 cars are getting repoed every day, you're going to tell us that the American consumer is strong, the American economy is resilient, and we're not going to go into a recession? I don't think so. Macy's CEO, on the other hand, is cautious about consumer spending. He said the lulls in the drop in sales were more pronounced in 2022 than in previous years, and he said the consumer is under pressure. Peter Schiff said the recession everybody denies exists is going to get worse. Obviously, Peter Schiff is kind of a doomer. He's always telling everybody the economy is going to crash, we're all going to die, and you need to buy gold. But I do kind of agree with him here. People are trying to make markets pump. People are trying to make things look like they're all well and good, but they are not. A lot of people think inflation is going down. It is not. Let's see. Economists warn of a recession. Economists warn a recession is coming. Don't be fooled. So I think this was an article from The Hedge. We got two quotes here that jumped out at me. Recessions always entail noticeable declines in both GDP and jobs, but such pullbacks are not necessarily obvious at the recession's outset. The two wrote for CNN, telling Americans don't be fooled by rosy forecasts saying otherwise. So you remember when Joe Biden and the White House and the Fed changed the definition of a recession and said it's no longer 2 quarters of negative growth? They said, there's still plenty of jobs, so we're not in a recession. What this quote is basically saying is, the GDP and jobs are kind of a lagging indicator. So by the time you get the GDP numbers or the job numbers, it's what has already happened, not what's currently happening. So by the time you know you're in a recession, things are already very, very bad. There was another quote from that article. Well, GDP and jobs do move in step with the economy. By the time they are released, they only tell us where the economy has been in the recent past. Let's see. Amazon has rolled out a service called Buy with Prime. They've recently rolled it out nationwide. It allows sellers to offer Prime services from their own website, and stores that offer this will be able to feature a Prime badge on their product listings. A lot of people are making a big deal about this. There's a lot of articles about how this may be the Shopify killer. This is really bad for Shopify. Personally, I don't think so. A big part of the reason somebody has a Shopify store or has their own e-commerce store outside of eBay, Amazon, and Walmart is because they don't want their whole business to be dependent on these companies. So why would you integrate Amazon into your own website? Also, to me, this doesn't seem like anything new. I guess the part about adding a Prime badge to your site is kind of a new feature. But you have for years, as far as, I was doing this back in 2015, 2016. I would send some of my inventory to Amazon, and when it would sell on my website, I would have Amazon fulfill the orders for me. So you can essentially use Amazon as a 3PL service, even if the sales aren't coming from Amazon. This isn't necessarily a new thing, although it's being kind of hyped up as if it is a new thing. We actually got a couple of kind of e-commerce related stories for you guys. AliExpress has partnered with a company called Split It to allow shoppers in Europe to pay in installments, and the service is called Pay After Delivery. Tesla has been dropping prices to attract new buyers, and previous buyers are pissed off. They said they feel duped. There was one woman who was quoted in this article, and she said, Tesla's now offering as much as $13,306 off of a car, and I paid full price. So people who paid full price for Teslas are now upset that other people are getting discounts. JP Morgan Chase is suing the founder of a fintech startup called Frank. They apparently lied about their success and created 4 million fake users when in reality they only had 300,000 users. This is kind of a crazy story. So obviously we know that there's water shortages and problems with the availability of water in states like Arizona and Texas and other states kind of in the Southwest. Apparently this is like an unincorporated city or large unincorporated neighborhood in a city called, or an area called, Rio Verde, Arizona. Apparently their water was recently shut off. So they were getting their water from the neighboring town of Scottsdale. But Scottsdale turned off their water. They said, we're facing a drought. We don't have enough water for our own people, so we got to cut you off. So this unincorporated area with, mansions, $500,000 to $750,000 homes have no water. People are installing rain barrels. They're flushing their toilets with rainwater, and they're having to do laundry at friends' houses. And you know what? Arizona is a cool state. It is an attractive state to me. But that's always been a concern of mine is, will Arizona and will the Southwest run out of water? We got a CNBC article. Let's see what this one is. After a year-long dip, consumer spending will be back in 2023. Well, that's a pretty rosy outlook. Inflation continues to get worse. Savings rates are going to be under 2% soon. Americans' levels of debt are rising higher. What did we say in the video the other day? Like 47% of people who carry credit card debt. are rolling it over from month to month to month. And we talked about if you roll over a $5,000 credit card debt over the course of 5 years or don't pay it off, that debt is going to rise to over $12,000. So credit card debt is expensive. Americans are tapped out. They're not able to save any money. Their debt continues to grow. Wages aren't keeping up with inflation, yet consumer spending will be back strong in 2023. Sure. So kind of follow up on the Andrew Tate story. Romania is widening its probe into him. I'm not super up to date or familiar with what's been going on with that story. But here's kind of a interesting thought that I had. So you guys remember when Russ Albright of the Silk Road was brought down? They had talked about how he was trying to hire a hitman to murder somebody. Turns out there was no evidence of that. They never wound up charging him with that, but it made him look really bad. This guy was trying to have somebody killed. So even though Russ Albright was on trial for running a website that sold drugs, they kind of made it look like he was this mad, crazed killer hiring hitmen. And I wonder if the Andrew Tate story is going to go in a similar fashion. And what I mean by this is accuse him of trafficking, really tarnish his name, really make him look bad, make people think that he really deserves to be punished, and then wind up going after him for like a fraud charge. But you'll wind up, not only will he wind up being guilty, but he'll likely also get a very severe sentencing and punishment because even though he wasn't charged with trafficking, he was accused with trafficking, and that winds up staying in people's minds. Really weird story yesterday. So I believe yesterday was the first day of Davos, which is a meeting of George Soros and Klaus Schwab and a WEF in Switzerland. They talk about society's problems and how they're going to, quote unquote, help the world. They talk about how they're going to solve global warming while they're all showing up on their private jets. Well, at the last minute yesterday, we heard that both George Soros and Klaus Schwab said they weren't going to attend the WEF meeting. That's really weird that, that's basically their meeting. That's a meeting they put on. That's their event, and they're not going to show up to it. I know Klaus Schwab said he had a scheduling conflict. I mean, this thing happens at the same time every single year. It's literally his conference, and he's not going to show up. So a lot of people are wondering what's going on. That's very strange. Was he concerned about his safety? Obviously, he's not a popular guy with most people in the world. There's plenty of people out there who would likely like to do him harm, and maybe they got wind of something like that. Maybe there's going to be some type of weird false flag happening. Not really sure, but very, very strange that these guys didn't attend Davos. And I guess after they announced they weren't attending, a lot of other elites decided not to attend as well. From what I heard, attendance was down about 50%. San Francisco has a reparations committee, and they're proposing that they give $5 million to each black resident, plus wipe away their debt. If you give somebody $5 million, do you also need to wipe away their debt as well? They also want to supplement low-income black people for the next 250 years. Inflation is a huge problem. California has a deficit. This country is out of money. The national debt is something like each American owes, over $200,000. And California wants to give $5 million to each black resident. I'm guessing there's millions of black residents in California. You're going to give everybody $5 million. I'm sure that won't cause inflation to worsen. And when it comes to reparations, I'm not a big fan of reparations to begin with, but if you are going to do reparations, why not offer free college and the free services of a financial advisor? If you give $5 million to somebody who's living in poverty, who has no financial education, they're going to wind up losing the money. Why not give somebody something, the whole give a man a fish and he eats for a day, teach a man to fish and he lives for a lifetime. I would much rather see, if you're going to do some type of reparations program, give people free college, job programs, and education, and either some financial education or the services of a financial expert. I think that would be much better than just giving people blank $5 million checks. Let's see, we got an article from Business Insider. It talked about, okay, so here's kind of a trend that I'm seeing is people who recently bought homes either can't afford the homes or hate the homes. There was an article from Business Insider the other day. 34-year-old first-time home buyer bought a $585,000 house. She paid $35,000 over asking, and she has a 6.99% interest rate, so essentially a 7% interest rate. She says she regrets the home purchase, and she's so upset about it, she hasn't even moved into the house. We're seeing a lot of people who have buyer's remorse. And again, this woman paid $585,000, $35,000 over asking with a 7% rate. Hasn't moved into the house. She said, this is the dumbest thing she's ever done. She said, what was I thinking? The payment now would be about $800 higher than it would have been a year earlier. And she said she was worried about turning into a millennial perma-renter, so she made a rash decision. And we saw a stat the other day, 72% of people who bought in 2022 have buyer's remorse. Now, you know what? The media likes to spin up these articles and create these narratives, but I did a video back in 2017 or 2018 that was titled 74% of millennials regret their home purchase. We see a lot of these kind of doom and gloom stats. About 63% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. But 10 years ago, there were articles, 57% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. So, while these statistics are troubling or shocking or interesting, it's not necessarily anything new. But that's today's video, guys. Feel free to check out the sponsor. Link in the description box below. Merch Informer, the all-in-one Amazon merch selling tool. If you're a merch seller, check it out. Do me a favor. It helps the algorithm. If you guys have any thoughts, comments, opinions, anything you want to add about today's video, go ahead and drop a comment in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to get daily videos, at least Monday through Friday, sometimes even weekends as well, updates regarding business news, the economy, and e-commerce, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below and ring the bell. As always, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.